Hello, today we're making rainbow cookies. I'm fast forwarding through this part because I've made these cookies before. I made them when I did the hard cookies. I'll put a link for that in the description box below, as well as the cherry cheesecake slices. All you need is an icebox cookie recipe. That basically means it's a cookie dough that you make, form into a log, refrigerate, then slice and bake. This is a really good recipe. I'm using it over and over again because it does work so well. So the recipe will be in the description box if you're interested in using this one. Once you have your dough, you're going to place it on the countertop, and I'm rolling it into a log shape. Now I need to divide this dough into 6 pieces because I'm using 6 colors for this rainbow. I'm not going to include indigo in the rainbow this time around. Now I'm not dividing it into 6 equal pieces. I'm dividing it into 6 pieces that start from smaller to larger. The smallest piece will be nearest the kettle. That'll be the violet, the center of the rainbow, so to speak. And that'll go right to left. So each one will be slightly larger than the other, going from right to left. Now, this is the first time I make these, so this is kind of an experiment. So I'm just fooling around with bits of dough, trying to get them so that from right to left, each one is slightly larger than the other. And as this video goes on, you will see why I'm doing this and why this makes sense. If you're wondering what the wires are hanging down the front of my shirt, I listen to audiobooks a lot, and I usually do listen to them while I'm baking. So each piece goes into a separate bowl, starting off with the largest piece here, which will be the red because it's the top of the rainbow. I'm using gel food color. It has the advantage of being very vibrant, and you only need to use a little bit to get that color. And also it's not liquid, so it doesn't water down your dough. There are all the dough pieces dyed a different color. Then you're going to put these in the refrigerator for an hour and a half to 2 hours, or in the freezer for about 45 minutes to chill it well so that it's easier to work with in the next step. I bought my food colors at the bulk barn that sells cake decorating supplies. However, you can get it at craft stores that sell baking supplies as well, or even online on the Wilton website. Once the dough has been chilled, start off with the smallest piece, which will be the violet, and that'll be the center of the rainbow, so to speak, which will be the center of the log that we're going to make. Roll it out until it gets to be about 8 inches long. And I guessed at this because this is the first time I make these, so I had to pick a length. And then take your next piece, which will be the blue piece, and you need to flatten the blue piece out because what we want to do is wrap the blue piece around the purple piece. So it needs to be flattened. I'm rolling it up between layers of parchment paper, which makes it a lot easier because this dough is sticky to work with. And then try to form it into a rough rectangle shape of even thickness. I placed the small purple log on top of the blue rectangle, and then we're just going to roll it up. In fact, it's kind of like sushi making. You're kind of going to use the paper to help you along. Roll it up and then seal the blue piece around the purple and just make sure that it's completely covered and that the seam is completely sealed. And what I would recommend you do is roll, once it's all sealed, just roll it on the countertop a few times just to get a nice round shape and to make sure that that seal is nicely done. At any time this dough starts to get too sticky to work with, put it back in the refrigerator for 15-20 minutes and it'll be a lot easier to use. And while you are doing one color, all the other colors should be in the refrigerator waiting. So here comes the green. Now, as you can see, the green will probably be a little bit bigger than that blue piece. That's why each color has to be slightly larger than the next, because the log that it has to cover is going to be bigger every single time. That's why the pieces can't be equal. So I'm rolling the blue-purple log onto the green and then just doing the same thing. Just rolling it up, sealing the edges, and then just rolling it on the counter a bit just to make sure it's even. And then moving on to the next color. And you're just going to continue like this as you go. I found that it's easier to roll the color out into like a log shape and then flatten it so that way you have the right length. And then you just have to work on the width of the rectangle. And moving on to the next one, which is orange. And as I went on, I realized you didn't really have to be a perfect rectangle. As long as it was rectangle-like and it covered the entire log, you were okay. Just make sure there's not a lot of overlap, that it just has enough to go all the way around, because you don't want it to be thicker on one part of your rainbow than another. Then once it's all covered up, roll it on the countertop a few times just to make sure all the layers are stuck together nicely. And then you're going to refrigerate it for several hours, 2 or 3 in the refrigerator, or at least an hour in the freezer. And then they're ready to cut. I've cut the log in half just to make it easier to manage. And then just slice it with a sharp knife into 1/4-inch slices. And then get the rainbows, slice each of the round cookies in half to get a rainbow. Or you could bake them just the way they are as well. That's up to you. Then place them on a greased cookie sheet or one that's been covered in parchment, or with a silicone mat like I have here, about 1.5 inches apart. They don't spread too much. And then bake them at 350 degrees for about 14 minutes or so, just until they are set and the bottoms are just a tiniest bit light brown, just a tiny bit. Let them sit on the cookie sheet and then put them on a cooling rack to cool completely. And there's the completed cookie. Now, just on a side note here, you'll notice how the cookies have a rounded bottom. That's just the way they baked, and they spread a little on one side. You can avoid this by baking the cookies whole, like I did with this one, and while they're still warm out of the oven, slice them in half. And then you end up with a rainbow cookie with a nice flat side. So there they are. I was actually very happy with the way these turned out. The cookie itself is not too terribly sweet. It's slightly soft with just a little bit of a crunch, and I'm very happy with them. You could use these for St. Patrick's Day, for maybe Pride Day, or even to decorate cupcakes with. Give them a try.